Welcome to our biological science class, children. Today we discuss about topic name is cell structure and its functions. You know about the cell. Cell is basic structure and functional unit of life. Every living organism is made up of cell, just like a wall is made up out of bricks. A living organism is made up of cells. So a cell is basic unit of life. In lower classes, you already learned that cells are made up of some parts. That means a cell is made up of some components. Each cell has got some other parts inside it, and you studied some of the parts. You studied about the nucleus, cytoplasm, and other parts of the cell. You also learn about the shapes of the cell. You learn cells exist in different shapes and sizes. So we know the cell are very small and microscopic. That means we can see the cell under microscope. So classification of cell or division of organisms based upon the number of cells they contain. All the organisms divided into two groups according to the number of cells. So that is unicellular organisms and the multicellular organisms. So which organisms consist only one cell, so that organisms are known as unicellular organisms. For example, amoeba and paramecium. So which organisms consist more than one cell, so that organisms are known as multicellular organisms. So for example, human beings and other animals. How do we study the cell? So to observe the cells, we need some special instruments. So you might have learned how Robert Hooke and Anthony van Leeuwenhoek observed the tiny things, microorganisms. So they used an instrument is called a microscope. So we need microscope to study or to observe the cells. So we can use a compound microscope to study the cell. So compound microscope is used to observe the cell and its organelles, cell organelles like a nucleus. So we can see the cell wall and the cell membrane, the chloroplast and mitochondria, and some of the cell organelles are observed under the electron microscope. A few other structures like mitochondria, chloroplast and the nucleus, nucleolus, and all the other things can be studied by this electron microscope. Now let us discuss about the typical cell. So what is the typical cell? We know the plant cell. We know the plant cell and we know the animal cell. And what is the typical cell? Typical cell is nothing but a model cell which represent all the cell organelles present in the cell. So for example, if we observe an animal cell, the animal cell have a different parts like nucleus and the mitochondria, Golgi bodies, endoplasmic reticulum and the nucleus, so on. So every animal cell do not have all the cell organelles. Some animal cells have more number of mitochondria and they may or may not have a Golgi bodies. So we observe a general diagram which represents an animal cell that showing all the cell organelles which generally appear in an animal cell. So is called a typical cell. So typical cells may not have exist. It is all the organelles shown in the typical cell of plant or animal will not exist in every cell. If for example chloroplasts are always shown in the typical plant cell, yet all the plant cells do not have a chloroplast. For example, root cells do not have a chloroplast, but mostly we found in the chloroplast in the green leaves and tender stem. Tender stem means green stem. Typical cell is a generalized cell diagram of a plant cell or animal cell. Now let us discuss about a typical plant cell and animal cell. Plant cell has got a thick cell wall, and inside the cell wall there is a thin membrane is called plasma membrane, or it is also called cell membrane, and inside it has got a cytoplasm, and at the center most of the space of the cell is occupied by the vacuole in a plant cell. And here we have a dark body, that is the nucleus, and the inside the nucleus the nucleolus, and it has got a Golgi bodies and mitochondria, and it has a plastids. So these all the basic parts, and there is the animal cell. The animal cell is bounded surrounded by the plasma membrane. So this plasma membrane common for both plant and animal cell. So if you see the mitochondria, nucleus and the nucleolus, endoplasmic reticulum and the Golgi complex, cytoplasm, so these common cell organelles present in both cells. Now we are going to study about the organelles of a cell. So first we are going to learn about the cell membrane. The cell membrane is the outer covering of a cell. It is found both the plant and animal cells, but whereas the plant cell they have an additional covering, that is the cell wall in the plant, whereas the animal cell they have only one, that is a cell membrane. The cell membrane is a very thin and flexible layer, and it is made up of mainly lipids and proteins. In animals the cell membrane is the outermost layer of the cell. That separates the cytoplasm from the external environment. Cell membrane, this is also known as the plasma membrane. So what is the function of the cell membrane? That cell membrane, it gives a shape of the cell. It is packing the inner contents of the inside of the cell, cytoplasm and other cell organelles, and it gives a size of the cell. So this cell membrane, it maintains the balance inside the cell. Inside the cell there is some specific compositions of the nutrients and water and other material. So the environment inside the cell is different from outside of the cell. The extracellular environment is different from the intracellular environment. So this difference is properly maintained by the cell membrane or plasma membrane. It means that the cell membrane do not allow any substance into the cell. It means it allow only selectively substances. So it permits only selectively substances into the cell. So this nature of the cell membrane is called as a selectively permeable membrane. So these characteristics of the membrane enables it to control exchange of substances between the cell and its external environment. So now let us discuss about the cell wall. So cell wall, this is a unique feature seen in plant cell, while the cell membrane act as a outer layer in an animal cell. In a plant cell there is an extra layer. It is called a cell wall. It is made up of cellulose. Cellulose is nothing but a it is consist carbohydrates. Okay, and next, in earlier it was believed to be inactive. The cell wall is inactive, but now it is considered to be one of the most significant part of the cell, so that continuously exchange information with other cells during growth and development. It exerts an inward wall pressure to resist the outward pressure exerted by the cytoplasm. Hence the plant cell can withstand much greater changes of surrounded medium than the animal cell. So this is information about the cell membrane and cell wall. The next class we learn about we will discuss about the nucleus and other cell organelles. Thank you.